We start a new chapter, which is chapter 17, which is selection and evolution. And this is, of course, the syllabus code is 9700, and this is the 17th chapter of the A2 syllabus. And this is for the syllabus 2021, because there's slight changes in the next syllabus, and we'll have to amend this video for the next syllabus. So, selection and evolution. Now, in selection and evolution, we're going to study natural selection and artificial selection, and then we're going to study the different mechanisms of evolution and how Darwin's theory of evolution has its profound effect on the study of organisms in biology. Now, first, I'm going to give you an overview of this chapter, and then I will start doing the syllabus points. Now, first of all, what we've got to understand in natural selection, first of all, there has to be a variation. If there wasn't variation, there would be no natural selection. So variation has to be present. Then the second thing is there has to be some sort of an environmental change. And then when this environmental change causes, now a filter is applied, and the filter applied, I mean, is that some of the organisms will be better adapted to this change in the environment, and those will survive. And that is why this is the famous quote of all biologists, is survival of the fittest. It's not a question of how they will change, but it is the ones, the organisms which are best adapted to this change in the environment are going to survive. So survival of the fittest is going to be mentioned a lot in this chapter. So number one, we're going to study first artificial selection. We're just going an overview of the chapter. And the second we're going to study is artificial selection. So natural selection and artificial selection. Artificial selection is all about human benefit. And I sometimes do not call it benefit, I say it's greed. Because human beings have an innate desire to acquire substances or material gains. So the greed, I feel, is more important, it's not benefit. Like high milk yielding cows. So high milk yielding cows is not going to be a benefit to the animal. It is only going to be a benefit of humans, because they're going to have dairy farms, they're going to have animals, they're going to have a lot of milk, they're going to sell the milk, and they're going to become rich and rich and rich. What they do with that money, of course, is a separate chapter. So, natural selection and artificial selection. The first example I give you, which is not a very accurate example, which is just a very layman's example, is that let's look at oak trees. Now, oak trees are all got the same type of leaves, and they've got the same color of stem, and they've got the same shape of leaf. What they have different is root length. Now, this root length is different. Some have short root lengths, some have medium root length, some have even longer root lengths. Now, you see, what would happen if drought started? For a couple of years we had drought and we had no rainfall. So now that would result in one of these being at a disadvantage. Why? Because it suddenly cannot now grow longer roots, but because the genetics dictate it to have short roots. So this one is going to be at a disadvantage. So after many years, please remember, after many years, this is not going to happen overnight. After many years, we will find these trees do not exist anymore. And these have survived. So this is what we talk about, survival of the fittest. And these have survived. And now what has happened is we say evolution has occurred. So if you've understood this example, you will be able to understand the other examples also, because it makes sense. Number one, first there was variation. There was variation in the root length. There was variation in the root length. Then there was a change in the environment. So drought. And then some of these organisms were better adapted to this change in the environment. So these survived and the others did not survive. So evolution has occurred. Now let's look at another very important factor which we're going to talk about a lot in this chapter is genes and alleles. So all of us human beings will have the gene for blood group. There will be no human being which doesn't have a gene for blood group. But what is different is that they have different alleles. So person is group A, he will have IAIA or he will have IAIO. So we only have three alleles. We only have three alleles, but the combinations are six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So human beings are divided into, if you look at human beings from anywhere on the face of this earth, there are only 4 types of blood groups. Yeah, so you can say 8 because we have positive and negative, but let's not go to the positive and negative story. So we have 4 types of blood groups. Either you've got a blood group A or a blood group B or a blood group AB or a blood group O. So there are only 4 types. There is nothing else. There's no intermediates. We can't say, oh well, there is sometimes some people have AX or AY or something like that. No, there's no such thing. There's either your blood group A or your B or your AB or your O. This is another diagram showing you the inheritance of blood group. And as you can see, we have a dominant and a recessive trait, which we've talked about in the chapter on inheritance. Then we have codominance. So the blood group AB is a phenomena of codominance. So blood types, either you have AO, of course we don't say AO, we just say blood type A. We say blood type B and we say blood type O and we have AB. So this is how blood groups are inherited, and we have only 4 types of blood group. Now this of course will be discontinuous variation. Discontinuous variation means that there are no intermediates. There are a few distinct categories. You have either A, you have either B, or you have AB, or you have O. So this is an example of discontinuous variation. Now coming back to variation, there is this very important table which gives you the differences between the 2 types of variation. Variation is only of 2 types. Number 1, it is continuous or it is discontinuous. Now I just talked about the discontinuous variation. So discontinuation is by a single pair of alleles caused by genetic factors only. As a very discrete distribution, and the examples are blood group, ability to roll the tongue. Either you can roll your tongue or you can't roll your tongue. There are only 2 possibilities. There is no third one. Your fingerprints and color blindness. Either you are colorblind or you are not colorblind. Then the continuous variation, the examples of continuous variation are it is controlled by many pairs of alleles. So it's not just a single pair, there are many pairs of alleles which are going to control it. And it is also caused by number 1, genetic factors which determine, and environmental factors. So, and the normal distribution is you get this sort of a normal distribution curve. And the example is height, like height in humans. If we say height in 16-year-old boys, height in 16-year-old boys, we're going to get a lot of variation. There's going to be many intermediates. You can't say there only be 5 feet or 5 feet 5, 1, 6 and 6, 5. No, there's a lot of variation between them. So this is called continuous variation. And then of course skin color, intelligence and body weight. So continuous variation is also has an environmental effect. Let's for instance look at an example in which a child is born and he has the genetic information that he should be 5'6" when he is fully grown. But then in his teens or in his childhood, he doesn't get enough calcium, he doesn't get enough protein in his diet, he doesn't build up the right hormones at the right time, and he does not grow to that height. Let's look at another example of a plant. Now, certain plants will have the height of the plant, or the stem length of the plant should be, say, 3 feet. But this plant did not get enough nitrates. So no nitrates, no light. So it will not grow so tall. So the important thing which you've got to understand is that environmental factors also play a role in continuous variation. In discontinuous variation, like for instance, person's blood group is blood group O, but he doesn't get enough food in his diet, or he doesn't get enough calcium in his diet, or he doesn't get enough protein in his diet, well, his blood group is going to remain the same. The blood group is not going to change. So discontinuous variation is not affected by the environment, while continuous variation is affected by the environment. Then we look at patterns of inheritance, in which we call of polygenic traits. Polygenic traits are those which are controlled again by more than one gene, and instead several genes contribute to the final phenotype of a given trait. Also what we see is, we see these sort of a normal graph, frequency of phenotypes and phenotypes. Each gene plays a small role in the expression of the trait. And this allows for a trait to vary greatly from person to person. Height is a polygenic trait, which is why people can be very short, very tall, or anything in between. The reason why being, it is sort of a number of genes which have its effect. You see the gene which is responsible for the growth hormone, the gene which is responsible for the thyroid stimulating hormone. So all these are controlled by a number of factors. That is why is called a polygenic trait. Next we come on to the causes of variation. Why does variation occur? And you have to understand is variation is part of the process of sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, there will be no variation. They will be all clones. But why does sexual reproduction result in variation? There is one couple and they have 4 sons, and 4 of them are very different. The difference in height, the difference in skin color, the difference in intelligence. One is very brilliant, one may not be that brilliant. So we have a lot of variation. It's the same couple, husband and wife are the same, but they have 4 sons. 4 of the sons are very different. Why is that different? Number one we talk about is crossing over. Now remember, crossing over we talked about in the chapter on meiosis. That is one of the major causes of variation. Then number 2 is independent assortment of chromosomes during meiosis. So independent assortment of chromosomes. We need to go back to that chapter to revise all that. Then number 3 is random mating. If you look in a forest, there will be so many lions. Now which mates with which one is random. It is not sort of fixed. So there's number 3, random mating. Then random fertilization of gametes. You see there are millions of sperms which are deposited. And which sperm fertilizes it? So random fertilization of gametes. Of course the ovum is only 1 or maybe 2 even at times. But millions of sperms are there, and which sperm fertilizes? So random fertilization of gametes. And then the most important, the 5th point, is mutation. And this mutation results in phenotypic variation. So there is going to be mutation in the genome, and it results in the phenotype changing, and we'll see a few more examples of this and how this happens. There are basically 2 types of mutations. Number 1 is a gene mutation, and the other is a chromosome mutation. Gene mutation is that it produces a change in a single gene, so there's going to be a change in the DNA sequence, and that is going to result in a gene mutation. So the primary structure of the protein will be affected. Now the different examples are, normal is, say, there's a very nice example, I like this. Substitution means one of the words is substituted, insertion, and then deletion, and then of course we have an inversion. So these are the different types of mutations, and we of course studied this in a previous chapter. Then we say mutation is a sudden change in the structure or the amount of genetic material, because chromosome mutation would result in the amount of genetic material. Now all mutations, most, now it says not all, but most mutations are harmful to an organism. Some may have no effect, and some surprisingly are beneficial. Now, mutations appear to be normal and natural events. Now, they are a very important part of bacteria. They're a very important part of viruses. That's why you see the different variants of the coronavirus, because it has mutated. So it is very, very normal to have, and God has given them this capability to mutate because it is important for their survival, this mutation. So mutations appear to be normal and natural events in bacteria and viruses. However, certain factors in the environment increases the rate of mutations, and these factors are of course called mutagens. Mutation rate varies from gene to gene and species to species. Now, there are two types of mutations. We talked about gene and chromosome mutation, but then of course, where does it happen in the organism? Now that is important. If it's in the gametes, or if it's in the somatic, means the body cells. If it's in the gametes, it would be in the testes of the male and the ovaries of the female, and of course this would be then inherited, because this would be passed on to the gamete or the germ line, and it will be passed on to the offsprings. Somatic are those which happen in the normal body cells occurring in after the zygote formation, and it's not inherited. Like for instance, a person has a mutation in the skin cells and he develops a skin cancer because of being exposed to UV light. So may affect the person during the lifetime, and their interesting examples are chimeras. Then what causes mutations? Spontaneous, just happens randomly, spontaneously. Increases caused by environmental factors, UV light, X-rays, and these chemicals which have been named here: benzene, formaldehyde, carbon tetrachloride. Now, what happens is in these mutations, I've given you this example of point mutations. Original DNA was UUA. What happens? UUGA. Now, a frame shift mutation. Every amino acid that is follows will be altered. Then in the silent mutation, you see this amino acid coded, this was the UUA coded for the amino acid leucine. Now, in a silent mutation, it still codes for the amino acid leucine. In a missense mutation, now it changes. So instead of UUA, now it is GUA. Now that results in an amino acid called valine. And in another nonsense mutation, what has happened? The UUA has become UAA, and this is a stop codon. So if it is a stop codon, you realize that this is going to be, that protein is going to stop being formed. After that, no more amino acids will be added. So it might shorten that polypeptide chain and result in a non-functional protein being produced, or it may work. So it can happen both ways. Now, further explanations of mutations are: it is a change in the nucleotide sequence of the DNA. So again, somatic cells, body cells, will not be passed on to the offspring. If it's in the gametes, that means it's in the egg and the sperm, it will be passed on to the offspring. Then mutation is a heritable change in the genetic material, and it results in allelic variations. So alleles, remember, gene, allele, allelic variations. On the positive side, mutations are the foundation for evolutionary change. Sometimes mutations are good, like light skin and high latitude human populations. On the negative side, mutation results in diseases. And the disease called hemophilia has been the result of a mutation, and it has been passed on to through generations. Now, as we can see the effects of mutations, occasionally a mutation is beneficial, changing the phenotype. So then this organism which has this mutation may have a better chance of, sort of surviving in this changing environment. So beneficial mutations are very rare, but they are bound to happen sooner or later. And if there are a large number of individuals in a population, then of course it's going to have a lot of effect. Now, if you're looking at this population, we have the original population, which is all these yellow circles that we have, and random mutation results in a faster rabbit and a slower rabbit also. Then natural selection occurs. Now there are three of the original population and there is one natural selection. One which is the faster rabbit, so natural selection. Now what is going to happen? The faster rabbits are going to increase, the slower rabbit are still there. But then what has happened now? We have the three of the original population and two of the faster rabbits. And as time goes by, these faster rabbits are going to increase. So nearly 20-30 years later, there will be more of the faster rabbits, which of course helps them because their population is going to increase. They won't be easily predated. So this was a beneficial mutation. So effects of mutation, this is what we need to understand very clearly. I want to discuss the different genetics in plants. We usually talk of human genetics, but we don't talk of plant genetics. Now, if you look at genes, what will be the genetic information in plants? Like we say in humans, there's a gene for blood group, but in plants, what will be the genes? Genes will be for the leaf shape. Is the leaf shape going to be like this? Is the leaf shape going to be like this? So, leaf shape, then leaf color. You see different shades of leaf. Then stromatal density. What is going to be the number of stomata per unit area? Is there going to be more or less? You see, those plants which have a higher stomatal density will of course be at a disadvantage if there is drought. Then margins of the leaf. Now these are all examples which came to my mind. This probably is not given in your book. Margins of the leaves. Then number 5, stem color. Leaf colors. You see, leaf have beautiful colors. Some are light green, some are dark green, some are got the white portions. They are variegated leaves. So all these different shapes are all controlled by genetic information is on the genome. Here you see these beautiful flowers and you can see how they all vary. They are very different in how. Number 1, number of the petals, the shape of the petals, the color of the petals, the venation of the petals. And you see these beautiful flowers. I mean, I love flowers and I think it would take me ages to really study them and look at them. So the petals, this one is a water lily. This one is of course a different. I'm not sure about the names. So they all are different in colors and they all have different number of petals and the flowers. So the flowers, where does the genetics come? How is it that always mango trees will have a certain color of the flowers on it? Apple trees will have a different color. Cherry trees will have a different color. So genetic information in plants. Then we look at all these different trees and you see how they vary in color of the leaves, how they vary in their branching network, how they vary in their foliage, the shape of the foliage. This is the shape of the foliage here. This is the shape of the foliage here. It's very different. This is of course an acacia tree and you see how the foliage is very different because it survives in very dry conditions. It has very long roots. And this one has a different, so the branching network is different. All this is determined by genetics. Like we talk about this in humans, we talk about the skin color and eye color, but we don't talk a lot about the plants. And I thought we would discuss this also, how these plants are different, how these trees are different. Then we see different leaves, and these are these beautiful different shapes of leaves, very nicely arranged in a pattern. And then you look at the types of leaves, and you look at the types of leaves and says only there are 2 types of leaves, simple and compound. So we say this would be discontinuous variation. So there are only 2 types of leaves, simple and compound leaves. And the compound leaves are further divided into pinnately compound and palmately compound. So the leaf shapes are very different than the leaf color is very different. Now this is a variegated leaf which has patches of white in it, and we usually use these for studying doing practicals on photosynthesis to investigate the necessity for chlorophyll. So this is a very good example of making you understand the types and the variation that we see. Another diagram for you to understanding the different names that we give to plants, because we usually refer to these names and I want you to be familiar with these names. How the leaf shape varies from plant to plant, and this is of course all genetically predetermined. So a mango tree will always have a certain shape of the leaf, and any mango tree anywhere on the world would have the same shape. So these are the different shapes and the different names that we give to them. An important part of this chapter is overproduction, which means that all organisms have the potential to increase in number. Like rabbits have many letters in a year, and if you buy two rabbits, a male and a female, and by the end of the year you probably have 20-30 rabbits or even more. So they have a reproductive potential to increase their population. Insects lay hundreds of eggs, frogs lay hundreds of eggs, and they reproduce very rapidly. But the main thing is why is that the numbers do not increase exponentially? Why don't they take over the world, or why don't they just like bacteria increase, rabbits increase, fruit flies increase? So why don't they just suddenly explode and their populations increase a lot? But they don't. What happens is that their populations, we say their populations oscillate around a mean. So say the population is 10,000, so we'll go up to 15,000, then we'll come back to 10,000, we'll go down to 8,000. So the mean is 10,000. Sometimes they go above 10,000, sometimes go a little less than 10,000. So the population means the number of a certain specific species. So the population oscillates around the mean, and that is of course dependent on two factors. Number one, biotic factors, and number two, abiotic factors. The biotic factors are number one, predation. If there are predators and there are more of those, then of course their numbers will decrease. But then something happens to the predators and they die. So predation, number one. Then competition for food. So if there is going to be less food, then there are going to be less of the organisms, less of the chances of their survival. And number three is infection by pathogens. Like for instance, there is a viral disease amongst rabbits and millions of rabbits are killed. Of course, there goes their numbers. So infection by pathogens. And the next thing after that is the abiotic factors. The abiotic factors is a non-living component. And that of course because all food chains start with producers. And producers means plants. Plants means autotrophs. So the important factor is water supply. If there is enough water supply, the plants are going to grow rapidly. If there's going to be drought, the plants are not going to grow that rapidly. So number one, water supply. Number two, the nutrient levels in the soil, the nitrates in the soil, the phosphates in the soil. All that is going to determine the rate of growth of these plants. And more the plant matter, more the producer means more the primary consumer. More the primary consumer means more the secondary consumer. So they're all interdependent on the producers, which are the plants, and that of course is dependent on the abiotic factors. This will be for this chapter. We're going to go on to video 2, which will continue with this chapter. Thank you.